Welcome to the Borderless Podcast, your guide to traveling, investing, and living beyond borders, where we talk about living the life that you want to live, where you want to live it.
All right, everybody, thanks for joining me on another Borderless Podcast. I am here with Brian David Crane, and he is the founder of the Caller Smart app. He is a successful entrepreneur for years, selling his first company at 24. And since 2014, he has lived in 4 continents, traveled to over 40 countries, and he's currently based in Bali, where he recently gave a well-received in-person talk at the legendary co-working space Ubud called The Hidden Downsides of Being a Digital Nomad. We're going to talk about that. He has written for Forbes, Inc.com, Tech.co, and Yahoo's Small Business Advisor about the realities of building successful digital businesses while traveling. Brian, thanks very much for joining me today.
Thanks, James, for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. So, I just got finished. I was watching your video, The Hidden Downsides of Being a Digital Nomad. We've had a lot of self-proclaimed digital nomads, and so I wanted to get somebody on also to kind of talk about, the other side of that there might be drawbacks for people that, might be thinking about it. And, I don't want to paint the wrong picture, and I thought you did a pretty good analysis of that. And I'll also link to that talk. First of all, let's start out. Why do you see digital nomad lifestyle being so popular today? You labeled some kind of geopolitical reasons that it is popular at this point in time. What are those reasons?
Yeah, I think you've got, you've got like internet has gotten so much better in some very remote places. Since 2008, if you're American or you earn in dollars, you've been the beneficiary of like a very strong currency, especially in some second and we'll call them developing and third world countries. So your dollar goes a lot further. In your case, you're in Mexico. We were talking prior to the podcast about how affordable Mexico is. Bali's the same way. As we're talking actually right now, I'm in Poland, and they use the zloty here, and the dollar is quite strong versus the zloty. So I think if you earn in dollars and you can spend in a currency that's weak. I have a friend of mine who spends a ton of time in Cape Town, South Africa. And one of the reasons he goes there is because the currency is so weak. And it's also been exceptionally safe. We're kind of in this, period of time since 1990 where life expectancy is up. I don't know the stats off the top of my head, but you have increases in life expectancy. You have a decrease in the murder rate. You have essentially the world's gotten a tremendous amount safer since the fall of communism or the fall of the Soviet Union, and it's kind of like a brave new world. And you also deal with this. I think there's a lot of FOMO, fear of missing out. You get onto some of these social media platforms, you see people who are working in exotic locations, whether it's Bali, whether it's a beach in Thailand, whether it's Mexico, that looks amazing. And you're like, if you're sitting in a cubicle and you're sitting under some fluorescent lights, or you're dealing with a boss that you don't like, you look at being a digital nomad and you're like, that's the ticket. I can't wait to get out there and do that, right?
Yeah. Right, sitting with a laptop on the beach, despite the fact that, if you actually are doing work on a beach, you're going to mess up your back and you're going to get sand all in your laptop there. Yeah.
No, I look at that and I'm like, that looks, it's bad ergonomically, like you're saying. You're putting at risk your tools, which are your money makers.
Right.
And especially like one thing I brought up in the talk was just if you're the boss or you are the client, like, let's assume you've hired this person for some freelance work, or you are the boss of this person who you've agreed to let work remotely. Like, you're going to look at them and be like, is this person's work product as good as it could be? Right? Mm-hmm. You start to question whether or not they actually, whether or not what they are producing for you is as high a quality as if they were sitting in an office, if they were sitting somewhere with a couple monitors,
right,
with a proper chair. So, I think that's a realistic concern. And I think that, I don't know if I answered your question directly, but the allure of being a digital nomad, it's incredibly sexy. Who doesn't want to be the author of their own life? And, we're taught that we're all equal and bright, unique snowflakes, and all it takes is an internet connection and your laptop, and you can just set out into the world and and you should follow your passion. And I think a lot of that advice is actually quite wrong, but we can get to that later on if you want me to rant.
That's cool. No. And so now that you went through specifically some of the drawbacks of that people might not understand when they're, like you said, if somebody's sitting at their job in the States or something like that, and now they're thinking about embarking on something like this. They see the pictures on Instagram or whatever. And so what are some of the drawbacks that they might not know about?
It's a paradox when it comes to being a digital nomad, is you actually have to have a tremendous amount of self-discipline to make it work. And you actually, I would say, need more self-discipline once you're out on the road than when you're just very clear about what you don't want. So for instance, like if you're, people talk a lot about freedom, and there's actually a distinction inside of freedom, which is freedom from and freedom to. And freedom from being like, I don't want to work in an office. I don't want to have a commute. Like those are very clear freedom froms. But the freedom to, in order to stay as a digital nomad, it takes a tremendous amount of discipline to actually maintain it, because it's not a sexy topic. There's nobody who's selling the digital nomad dream who goes, you know what you're going to have to do once you actually get on the road is actually work a whole lot more, let's say, or at least at the same level as you were working in order to get out initially. You'll photograph amazing things traveling abroad that you want to show on, share on social media with your friends and family back home. But doing this could cost you. If your employer, who agreed to let you work remotely, or your clients see you posting pictures of yourself hanging by the beach every day in a bathing suit, whatever, drinking Mai-Tais, they're going to question the quality of your work and your output. And I think that so using social media to paint a rose-colored picture of your life could potentially jeopardize your main source of income. That would be number two. I think it's very hard to maintain sustainable momentum. And what I mean by that is that to become so good at something that the market can't ignore you. When you're moving around, it takes up a lot of time. It takes up a lot of energy. In doing that, you lose momentum every time you're shifting places, because there's a whole lot of unknowns that come with changing. You might be in an amazing co-working space, but the house that you rented off Airbnb, it has a lot of street noise, or the bed isn't as hard as you would like, or it's not as dark as you would like, or the air conditioner's out, or the Wi-Fi is not strong in the office. I mean, there's just 100 things that can go wrong. And the more times that you roll the dice on changing locations again and again, the more you damage that momentum. And I think you take your eye off of what you're actually trying to do, which is, create something meaningful or develop a set of skills that are world-class, or that are really valued by the market. Have you suffered from that?
Oh yeah. No, I think that I think that's true. I always wonder about people that it seems like they're bouncing around a lot. I mean, I could see if you're doing it every 3 months or so, a couple months or something. But there's some people that every other day they're posting pictures of themselves on a airplane going somewhere else, and I mean, I just can't understand how you could get work done. And like you're saying, you get to a new place, and I'm always worried about that, even though, of course, it's going to say there's internet, at the Airbnb or whatever that I'm going to. But, is it going to be stable? Is it going to be quiet? Quiet is a big thing in Latin America, especially here in Mexico. Mexico is just like loud country everywhere. So, it's a big thing. So definitely.
And I think that some of the people who are posting these pictures of constantly changing locations, I look at that and I think that there's a distinction in the digital nomad community where I think a lot of people should actually just go on vacation and not take their laptops with them. I think that they should, go for 2 months and have a gap, right? They're between jobs. Just leave your laptop at home. Right. I think. Yeah. I don't think you need to like necessarily try to monetize every moment. I suppose being Americans but living abroad is that you see it's hard for Americans in particular to take a vacation, like an honest to goodness vacation. And I think the digital nomads, there's a real danger in that they don't really take a break, right? They're in this constant work play space that is neither work nor play.
Yeah, and it's tough too, because if you have, a blog or something like that, and you're doing it all on your own, just like, every other business, right? There's nobody there. If it's just you're solopreneur, is that what they call? Then, you got nobody to pick up the pieces, so you can't take a vacation even if you wanted to. It just takes over your life.
And you have to blog in order to be able to sustain the lifestyle.
Right.
So it creates this, it's like you're a slave in one sense to the lifestyle, right?
Right.
And you can't afford to stop the lifestyle because then you don't have anything to blog about. So you continue to do it. And it's a bit, it can be a challenge. I think another one of the downsides to it is that you don't get mentorship, in-person mentorship. And, in my own entrepreneurial journey, I've been fortunate. I've been mentored by some pretty amazing people, and that came out of me being in person and around those people. And I think that you learn a lot through osmosis. It's underestimated, especially in the 21st century. There's a belief of you can just pick up stuff through podcasts and digitally through email and YouTube and whatnot. And that's true to a certain sense, but you don't get the in-person. How does this person show up on a day-to-day basis? What are their habits? Do they actually follow through on their habits that they, say that they're doing? And I also think that with mentorship, you lose this component. Like there's a distinction in mentorship. So you have somebody who, I like sports analogies. So let's say you have somebody who is terrific at shooting 3-pointers, but that their romantic relationships are a train wreck, right? Like they're just a train wreck. So you want to learn from them how to shoot a 3-pointer really well, but you also don't want to pick up all of the, let's say, baggage that comes with their romantic relationships. You don't want to start to think about them like how they think about women or how they treat women or whatever it is. And that you have to, some of that stuff only comes about, like you can only make that distinction between, does this person have a certain skill I want to learn, or are they actually a mentor, by being around them on an ongoing basis. And when you're a digital nomad and you're moving around, you just don't get that ongoing experience and ongoing presence of the other person.
Right. Yeah, and I don't want to give people the wrong impression. It's not like you're saying, oh well, no, just forget it and stay at home and don't go out or anything like that. You're talking about some skills that you can have for staying power, and you also talk about looking at it as an expat rather than digital nomad. And listening to the talk, I realized that I should probably stop. Every once in a while I'll say I'm a digital nomad. I have it written on some bios and stuff, but actually I think that expat would definitely is a better term, because almost all the time I am here at home. I don't go jumping around all the time, and I'm pretty enmeshed in the community. I have friends here and stuff like that. So maybe you could talk about that.
Yeah.
Number one, how about staying power? What are some skills? What kind of skills do you need in order to have staying power in this type of lifestyle?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is you need a lot of self-discipline. That's the first one when it comes to staying power. There was a study done at that co-working space in Bali by Harvard that they looked at what it took to have staying power as a digital nomad. And the biggest thing that they found was that the people who entered into the lifestyle, number one, they already had marketable skills. And number two is they already had remote income in place before they made the jump, right? It was, I think for staying power is that like you need to have but basically those two things. Your skills need to be in demand, and you need to already have remote income. This idea that you're going to like buy a one-way ticket, jump on a plane, and land in Mexico or Costa Rica or Bali or wherever, and figure it out from there. To me, it's a recipe for disaster. And the study that Harvard did, that this lecturer from Harvard did at Ubud, it was a fascinating look. She got something like 1,000 people passing through Ubud to fill out these surveys. They were unnamed, but people declared like how long they'd been on the road, what was their income, what the stresses were, what the benefits were. And what she was finding was there was a consistent group that they had marketable skills already, and they already had remote income, and they were the ones making it work. And then there were a bunch of people, Pareto's law, probably 80% of people they probably should have just been on a vacation, realistically. Like their skills were atrophying. They were going backwards as far as, financially. They were actually spending more money than they were making, and they were stressed, so.
Okay, so how can looking at it as a expat rather than digital nomad, what does that mean, and how can that help you?
You get planted in, right? Like in your case, we were talking before the chat about, you're putting down roots in San Miguel,
right?
And you get property, you start meeting people, you get involved in communities, local communities. I think in my case, I'm playing soccer a couple times a week in Bali. I have like a set of routines that sustain and maintain it. And I think that when you shift to a mentality of being an expat, you start to actually like think of, okay, if I'm going to be here for a while, like the conversation or the person that you're meeting, it's not just transactional. It's not like this person helps me get from point A to point B. It's like this person could be somebody that you grow into a friendship with, or you learn a language and you make some deeper roots and find local businesses that you want to get involved in. Yeah,
another thing is, if you want to help out or be part of the community, like for instance, I'm associated with it's kind of a scholarship here for local people in San Miguel de Allende for the young people, and they need a mentor to help them as they're going through the scholarship, and so I help mentor the young people, and so that's that's cool, and that's
cool.
Yeah, right, and you wouldn't get that just bounce around a lot, I guess.
No, yeah, I mean, and out of that mentorship, I'm sure that if you meet these local people, that you get invited into their homes.
Oh, yeah.
You get to meet their families, and like that realistically is what an expat is about, right? It's not this. I mean, I think the distinction there would be a lot of times with digital nomads, like where they're at is sort of a backdrop to their own narrative, and with an expat, you're actually putting your fingers in the soil and getting into it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, I've thought, for me personally, that I would like to have maybe 2 or 3 main places where I spend a lot of time, and then I could just do it that way, and spend significant amounts of the year at different areas. So, for instance, like here in San Miguel, it's phenomenal in the summer. At this time, it's just the weather's great, everybody's out, there's all kinds of stuff to do. Winter, not so great. So maybe, I'll choose another place to go for winter and that kind of thing. So that would be a lot better for me. And obviously, if other opportunities come up, conferences or whatever, I can go check those out too. So
yeah. I think that. I mean, that's. I'm on a similar trajectory to what you're describing. I spent the first quarter of this year in the States. It's conference season, so there was a lot of people that I wanted to see, and also it helps. I mean, personally, it helps me stay mentally sharp and engaged, is to go to see people face to face, go to the conferences, get involved. And then, it's not the nicest time of the year to be in the States, but at the same time, it's what the calendar dictates. So, and then in your case, I don't know where you would go in the wintertime, but right. Ironically enough, a lot of people go to Mexico.
Yeah, I know.
North America.
Yeah. I'm thinking about it now, and what I'm doing with the Airbnbs now, renting them long term, and then turning around and renting them short term. A lot of people do this type of thing also for having several different residences. If you can find a reliable person that can run it while you're not there, then you can have a place to stay when you're not there, and you're making money from it. When you're in the area, you can stay there, and then when you're not there, you can have somebody run it. You can be making money off of it, and so that way you can have 3 places or something like that.
I think that's brilliant. My question in that is that, are you the one who's still dealing with the inquiries when they come in off Airbnb?
Well, right
for
now,
those 3 properties
with Airbnb, you can have co-hosts. So you can so you can set up a co-host on individual rentals. And so if you have, like I said, if you find somebody that is reliable, then you could just have them, deal with the inquiries, or you could do it yourself. I have it automatic pretty much. When somebody reserves, it just sends out an automatic thing of how to get in there, and they have smart locks now that'll send them out a specific code, and that's how they can access the keys. So. And then the maid gets her own code, and she can come in and get everything ready right away, and she knows the calendar. So yeah, it's pretty good. I barely have to do anything.
I like it. I like it, and I think if you find 3 properties in different parts of the world where there's community or people that you want to be around,
yeah.
It would be awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I think to kind of summarize on the digital nomad stuff is that part of the solution has been to think of yourself more as an expat, and another part of the solution has been to plant yourself in a particular place for 3 to 4 months, like what you're talking about, and then use that place as a base from which to go explore locally, right? So you probably know Central Mexico pretty darn well at this point.
Right.
Like I've been all around Bali and some of the surrounding islands at this point. I mean, and then you have a base. You can head out when you want to, get your adventure, come back, but you're not decamping all the time.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention too. I mean, I know that I'm sure you're familiar with the PT theory.
Yep.
Although it's permanent tourist to perpetual traveler, it would actually fit more in this context we're talking about into the expat ideal, because you have different flags in different areas depending on your business or your investments. Set up in a way that favorable for taxes and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Another thing is, at the end, you kind of touched on something. It seemed like you were kind of worried that we might be having some changes or conflicts or something that could, that could change this. So I think you mentioned like North Korea, but that we're in this time period where it's very safe. We were talking about the currency exchange and that type of stuff. That the U.S. dollar is very high. I mean, do you see that? Is that something that worries you a lot, or what do you think might happen going forward?
I honestly don't know. I mean, I follow. Some people that you probably follow as well, people like Jim Rogers. There's a guy named George Friedman who writes about geopolitics that I think is brilliant. It's tough to say. Statistically speaking, it's been since 2008 that we haven't had a recession, so 9 years. That's a very long period of time, and I think that if you look at the U.S. government's balance sheet, it's definitely not gotten better since 2008. If nothing else, the Fed has made its position even worse. And from a macroeconomic standpoint, I don't know what's going to happen with North Korea. I don't know what could suck the U.S. in elsewhere, but it's like we've really lived through like a golden period since 2008.
Right.
And you and I are, I think, probably close in age, and so we don't really have that historical perspective of what it's like to go through a serious recession, like a bear market, 30% down in the stock market, or a war that is not all consuming, but bigger than just a skirmish, right?
Right. So, yeah, I had a guy on, Stefan Verstappen, a few episodes back. And he thinks that there's really bad stuff going, and he teaches people self-defense and kind of bug out equipment and all this type of stuff. So I don't know but he is based in Canada, and he doesn't have anything to do with kind of traveling and stuff like that. So is there anything that you're doing to think about that, because that's kind of hard, right? As an expat, especially as a digital nomad, it's pretty much impossible. But what can you do to think forwardly about that?
We both grew up in the South, right? I mean, you spent a lot of time in North Carolina. I grew up in Tennessee, and there's a mentality. I think there's a philosophical difference of you have people who like look at the ground and be like, I'm planted here. I'm not going anywhere. Mm-hmm. Come hell or high water. This is my home. This is my people. This is where I'm staying. And you have another group of people, you and I would probably fall into that, which is like, I'm just going to go look for greener pasture elsewhere. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think that, the people who are in, this is my land, I'm not going anywhere, they're never gonna, they're gonna stay and fight. The ones who are, there's greener pasture elsewhere, I'm gonna go where I'm treated best economically or whatnot. I think that is a defense mechanism in and of itself, but I think that it pays to, travel with, I mean, I have all kinds of stuff like backups of backups of backups, probably like you do. I don't know, keep redundant bank accounts, and, you lose debit cards. A lot of banks don't want to send FedEx debit cards overseas, right? So, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with expat health insurance? I wish I had answers for all this stuff. I mean, a lot of it is, I use Earth Class Mail for handling, a lot of the tools that I think you probably recommended.
Yep. Yeah. And I'm going to have somebody on in the next few episodes about health insurance, expat health insurance, somebody that's been recommended to me. So
you will have to ask them about how Obamacare plays in with expat health insurance.
Oof, yeah.
Because you can't get just from what I understand, you cannot get just an expat policy. It actually has to be a U.S.-based policy in whatever state you're a resident of, and then it has to have an expat component added to it. So you can't split the two, basically. Right. You're paying for something you're not using. Might be wrong, but...
Yeah, that stuff is so, I just don't I'm really bad at the insurance stuff. I don't I studied it for a while, but it's like another language to me, so try to wrap my head around that. So, what most people are worried about, or what they're thinking about when they want to do something like we're talking about, is making money, right? So we've talked about why a lot of times it's not a good idea to think that you're just going to go as you see people on social media and stuff like that, that it's so easy.
To jump first and figure out if you got a parachute once you're already in the air.
Correct. Yeah. And I actually did a video about how to make money in Latin America, where I specifically recommended that people don't do that. They don't come down without a plan, because you are not going to get. So I'll just talk about Mexico. You are not going to come down here and get a job that's going to pay. You're going to be stunned at how much people make. I mean, that's not going to work. And there are some people that come down and start businesses. They have money before, and a lot of them don't work. People lose money. So I was just recommending people do have some sort of. And I went through a few ways that people can secure income before they do that, right? Because you want to have. Yeah. Okay.
In their home country, so they're earning dollars or earning euros. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, and the idea is not to come to Mexico and earn Mexican wages. The idea is to come with an American job, and then although it is less expensive to live, you can then hire your standard of living. That's the idea. And so, what are some ways that you've seen that have been especially good for people trying to do that?
I mean, I own another business which is called Spread Great Ideas, and we invest in e-commerce brands and then help them with their with their digital marketing. And
okay. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking about. Yeah, I that's a great business.
And that's one that we have a distributed team for that business, and but again, we're doing what we're talking about, which is we earn in dollars, and then. We're not. I'm personally not spending dollars elsewhere, but I think that if you do something like, if you want to start out and you want to do social media marketing, you wanted to do like start a consultancy. What were some of the ideas that you recommended?
I know some people, when they get a certification in a certain software or something like that, pretty high level, you can then get a job and work remotely that pays very well. If you have some type of, and I'm not an expert on all the different types of things, but I've known people to do that. And, they're full-time jobs. But for instance, I know I have a cousin who I couldn't tell you what the exact certification he has is, but it's, software network setups. And he has 2 full-time jobs, but he works remotely. So it actually turns out to be less than 40 hours a week in both jobs. Because he's so much more productive when, working from home or wherever he's working. And I know another guy that does the same thing. He works barely, I don't know. Again, I don't know what certification he has, but he probably works 1 hour a day, and he gets paid pretty good money. And so, that's one thing.
I mentioned this in the talk at Hubu. There is this sort of tier of, like your cousin, people who are incredibly who have a skill set that's already in demand, and there's websites like TopTal, Dice that are for the top 1% or top 10% of tech talent, or that I think if you have that talent, you can go on there and for sure find something that will allow you to be remote and keep your skills sharp. But those people, they're at the top 1%, they're at the top 10%, right? That means there's 90% who aren't qualified to be on a site like TopTal, right? Mm-hmm. And TopTal I've hired off TopTal. We've had good and bad luck with them, but they have a very, very rigorous hiring process for engineers. And if you are an engineer and you pass the TopTal certifications, like not your cousin, but somebody who has a technical background, number one, it's a mark of excellence, and number two is that those guys are making six figures. Mm-hmm. Living, they can live wherever, but they have to produce, right? They still have to work.
Well, that's the thing, is that he actually has, he's reached out to me a lot. He listens to the podcast, and he's wanted to, do the expat thing, or at least try it out, but he has not had a chance. He's married and he works a lot and stuff, and he just can't. He can't get. I think he's given up. To be honest with you, he can't. He can't just get the time to be able to do it all, and so he stays where he is, and he has to stay in touch with his employer.
I mean, is his wife on board with it?
No. That's another thing. Yeah, a lot.
It's like trying to push a rock up a hill. Right.
Yeah, and this is another thing that I've seen a lot of guys have trouble with. They cannot get their spouse on board with doing that kind of thing, and. I have a friend of mine who came down and tried it for 6 months, and it was kind of funny. Like, they were supposed to be, trying this, and this is going to work. And what happened is she didn't try to fit in at all. She didn't try to get to know anybody. She just saw it as like a 6-month vacation, and then after the 6 months was done, she's like, "Okay, well, we're going back." And he really wanted to stay, and it was. It put a strain on the relationship, but he finally just sucked it up and went back to the States.
In a partnership, there's two people.
Yeah.
And I think I've read a little bit about why there are so many guys who are digital nomads and not so many women. Like, maybe the independence and the travel is so appealing. I do think it's appealing to women, but I don't think it's as appealing. It's not as I don't know why. Like, based on numbers that I see, it's definitely majority guys.
Yeah, well, I mean, guys are the adventurous. They want to go out. They want to, see new things. Especially if they're single guys, they want to, look for the exotic women. And women they want to, they have more of an apt to want to nest and go somewhere. Yeah, a lot of women say they want to travel. In my experience, that means they want you to take them on a vacation somewhere for a week and then go back, not go all out and do, that's just too much, too crazy. And, especially if they have a lot of, friends.
You're asking them to unplant.
Right.
It's a big ask. And they're like, "Why are we going to Mexico?" And you're like, "Because it's going to be awesome."
Right. So,
but I'm going to miss all my family and friends.
Yeah. So you've been able to, start this business that you run now, while, being an expat. And so can you give any pointers as far as that goes? That seems like, one way to make a living and be an expat. So what if somebody wants to go the entrepreneurial route? What's the best way that they can get started doing that?
I mean, Caller Smart it's a disruptive business, right? And I think there's a distinction when you and I were talking about both having digital marketing agencies. Mm-hmm. You have a cash flow business first, and then you can use the cash flow business to then fund the disruptor business. And the benefit to doing that, or to fund the next venture, we'll say, it doesn't necessarily need to be a disruptor business. It can be, another cash flow business or a local business, whatever type of business you'd like to get involved in. But the having the cash flow business initially, or having a consultancy, or having something that pays the bills, to me is it's a sustainable route into entrepreneurship. And the reason I say that was, you said in my intro that I had sold my first company at 24, and it was a recycling company. did well with the sale, and I had started on a trip around the world called 25 at 25, and I got three countries into the trip and wound up canceling it. There's a lot of reasons for the cancellation, but the biggest one was that like I was just burning through money and I had no cash flow actually coming in. And I was looking at the books that you recommend, and one of them is Rich Dad Poor Dad. And you know from Rich Dad Poor Dad or Cash Flow Quadrant that like if you could have, I mean, unless you're insanely wealthy and you live off of interest in your investments, which is not the case for me, and I don't know if it's the case for you, but like you need cash flow, right? And so to focus first on the cash flow component, then you get the opportunity to fund another business. But I think a lot of times, like you need to get that first 1,000 coming in, or that first 5,000, or whatever it is, so that you have some momentum to then take a bigger swing, right? It's a base hit as opposed to going for a home run.
Right. No, absolutely. I think that's great advice. So how are you? Well, you sold a company when you were young, so that was what allowed you to get that cash flow? Yeah,
I sold that. Well, I sold that recycling company, yeah, and then I actually went belly up during the 2008 financial crisis. So, I had this big dream of traveling the world, 25 at 25, canceled the trip, come back, started investing in, and I use the term investing, you can't see me, but it's in air quotes, in the stock market, and I'd set up a private equity fund with a group of friends, and we were doing swing trading. From what I understand from your bio, you were buying houses, I think in 08, right, or 07, 08, rental houses, and the market shifted, right? The market changed, and the fund went under, and I was trading the fund on the side in my own personal account, and I was net negative, and that was one of the reasons I reached out to a group of friends. I got a job offer in Silicon Valley, and I moved out there, and that was really where I got mentored. But it was out of that mentorship that I learned how to build cash flow businesses. Like I learned how to build and launch, digital brands, and so from that experience, or from the learnings there in the Valley, those cash flow businesses then have funded other businesses.
Right.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and I think the idea about investing in online businesses is great. I actually I've had the Empire Flippers, Justin from the Empire Flippers on. I don't know if you're familiar. They sell a lot of websites there, website broker. And I was trying to get Ace Chapman on. I actually missed a podcast. We had one set up, but he calls himself the mini, his strategy mini mogul. Buying all these online businesses. And I think that's, it's a great strategy. They're great assets if you know about online business, if you know a little bit about marketing, and you can even, hire a lot of it out. But, it's almost like buying real estate on the internet, getting a business giving you cash flow that's on the internet. And the way I see, e-commerce and things on the internet is that, it's like a city or a country that people are just flooding to like never seen before, right? So that's a pretty good sign that it's going to be going up in value. So yeah, I think that's a great strategy.
I would add to what you just said, which is when it comes to e-commerce or it comes to digital businesses being akin to real estate, is that I think there's an opportunity. My background is SEO. It's probably where I'm most comfortable in the whole digital marketing realm of things. And when I look at websites and I see a website that's we'll use as a real estate analogy, that it's in a nice neighborhood, it ranks for certain keywords that are valuable to you, but the website was built with front page, or it's just bojangled, right? Like it hasn't been touched in a couple years, but it's got an awesome backlink profile. It's got, it's been featured in XYZ publications, stuff that would be very, very hard to replicate. Like I look at that property and I'm like, man, if I could buy that, it'd be like buying the ugliest house in the nicest neighborhood, right? Mm-hmm. And then you get in there and you gut the property and you put in the nice faucets and you paint it and you fix it up, and using the real estate analogy again, and all of a sudden you have like a very nice piece of property in a very nice neighborhood that you control and that you own. And So, I mean, if I could go back and give myself advice 10 years ago, I wish I would have been buying more properties digitally.
Yeah, sure. And, it's almost like a blueprint, a lot of times with the online marketing, what you need to do, once you get a hang of using the paid advertising or organic traffic, and, how to run a website, how to do e-commerce and that type of stuff. It's almost like a boilerplate that you can apply to a lot of different things. So, those are the type of skills I think that people need to get on, because that's what any business owner nowadays you need to know about. Some at least some stuff on SEO, on paid traffic, on WordPress, on maybe a little Photoshop or this type of stuff. How to set up at least the basics of setting up a website and how to make it look nice. Because you can these are the skills of entrepreneurship. Along with knowing about how to read a balance sheet, knowing how to raise money. These are other skills that are necessary no matter what you want to do. And you can go to places like Udemy. I recommend that one. It's on the website. If people go through the link there on the website, then that will give me a little affiliate thing at the same price. And they give courses for as low as like $10 sometimes. I mean, I've learned a lot of things on there. So. We have to.
I was going to say, I think one addition there would be go to work for someone. Go find someone who does. I don't know if you have people that you mentor, James, that are in the digital space. I know you're doing some mentorship of locals in Mexico, but like people who work for you who want to learn how to run a successful podcast, how to do X, Y, Z when it comes to digital strategy, and that. I have people who work for me that part of the benefit in us working together is they're learning these sort of skills, and I learned them, right? And I passed them along, and I got taught by people who were way smarter than me. And it's like, I think that a lot of times there's something to be said for you can watch a video, but there's also like get your hands dirty, and sometimes it's better on somebody else's dime if they're willing to fund it. Take you on as an employee. You can stub your toe a little bit, and it's not your own cash that you're burning through. So
yeah, all right.
I do think it's valuable to be an employee and work for somebody who has a set of skills that you want to acquire. Right, like if you want to have a digital business or you want to be an entrepreneur, don't be a server. Right, don't work at Starbucks. Like go find someone who, even if it's the same amount, and I'm being harsh in this one, but like I think there's a value in like go work for people who do what you want to do already, and be ruthless in that, because like going to work for like a server, and I'm picking on servers, but it's because it's an easy one. It's like it's easy to find jobs there, but you don't really learn skills that you translate into you actually becoming an entrepreneur,
right?
Unless you want to own a restaurant.
Yeah, and I think that there's something to interfacing with the business, at least being involved with other people that are in the business that you want to be in. You're connected. Somehow. That's one thing that I struggle with is when like you said that you go back to the States. I think 3 months, because you go shake hands, meet people face to face, conferences and stuff like that, and that kind of keeps you in the game, because you can get very disconnected, and then people forget about you, and you forget about people, and you're not knowing what's going on. So you run your company with all of the workers that you use are remote, is that right? Or you're remote, right? And everybody else has an office?
With Caller Smart, our software team is in Warsaw, Poland, and they're all in one office. I'm remote, okay. And then we have other people else. We have elsewhere in Europe, elsewhere in North America, and actually elsewhere in South America. So, the marketing catch-all is that when I'm in Bali, we're split between 4 continents, but the core team, like the engineering team, the team that builds stuff, they're all in the same office in Poland.
Okay. Yeah. And I wanted to ask you, how you went about finding those people, what kind of advice do you have for people if they're, looking at starting an office? How do you go about finding your employees?
Yeah. I think that, I can speak on the software side because I've had both good and bad luck hiring hiring technical talent. And so what I have found to be the best route for hiring tech talent is you look at the conferences. So for instance, let's say you want to build something in PHP, or let's say you want to build something in WordPress, you want to build something in PHP, you want to build something in Magento, 3 totally distinct platforms or languages. And you would look at, okay, who in Slovakia or Slovenia or Poland or Croatia is talking at the WordPress conference or the Magento conference, and like kind of use the social proof of the local conferences about a particular topic, who's already the recognized leader in that space, and then reach out to those, either those people or those companies to work with. I find that to be, they're already vetted in their local community. You're going to pay a little bit more, but it's so much cleaner and easier than trying to hire off of something like Rent-A-Coder. Rent-A-Coder is not the name of the site any longer, but Freelancer. Then, if you want to build something big or meaningful, is that like, and you want to find a team, go look at the conference circuit and see what are the teams that are already, their CEO is speaking there, or their CTO, and then use that as a litmus test initially. And then I think the second part is you need to have in your budget to fly there and meet them face to face. You learn a lot about how they operate. You can look them in the eye. You plan on just, having a couple drinks, talking through the project, talking through whatever it is that you're building. And sometimes I've met engineers, or I've met people that after meeting them in person, I'm like, this is a bad fit. We actually shouldn't work together. And it's been based on, just a gut instinct. And it was hard, and it's hard to get, through Skype or through email, because there's a tendency, especially in the tech world, to say yes before understanding the scope of the problem, right? Mm-hmm. Or understanding what exactly it is that you're trying to accomplish. And so seeing them face to face, listening to their questions, making sure that they understand it, and that you understand it, is invaluable. So I do think it's valuable to go there face to face if you can.
All right, cool. I think we've covered a lot of stuff here. You're definitely the type of guest we like to have on the Borderless podcast. A lot of things that we talk about here. Yeah, and so thanks a lot for having some time with us today, and I hope that we can keep in touch.
Sounds good. Thank you, James. Take care.
Okay, Brian, you too.
All right, bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us for the Borderless podcast, traveling, investing, and living beyond borders.